Seems to be working. Hi. Oh,
Yeah, we're good now.
yes.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 4 of Meta. We will begin shortly. We are on panel with writer Abhishek, Anicca, Mohammed, who is a second-year communicative English student, third-year communicative English student, sorry, and Professor Nadika. Abhishek is one among the warmest writers I know. He's very willing to talk about writing in all its aspects. And I was very, very, very happy when his book came out early this year, and I was just very, very excited to have him over here at Meta. Um, Professor Nadika will be moderating this session along with Mohammed. Abhishek, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to join us at Meta. We're very, very, very happy that you're here. And over to you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vijay. Hi, Abhishek. I've been looking at some of the things you've been writing and your curation for Agents of Ishq and other things. Very, very glad that you could join us for Meta. And Mohammed, up to you.
All right. So, first off, great book. I was kind of stunned by how I went into the book looking for some sort of relation to my situation, but I found that it was so much more. It was more about an exploration of life rather than just disability, which was very welcome for me. So I'd like to start off by talking about you in your book. The kind of central theme is that this dichotomy between empathy and pity, and you talk about them like they're opposites in a way. But I want to ask if you've been through some sort of like crossover between the two. Like, for example, when I'm at airports, people ask me if I want a wheelchair, even though they've seen me walking without difficulty. And grown men have grabbed me on the street and they try to help me, and then they go like, they're like so sad, and they still try to help me though. So I don't know what to feel, because it's like, okay, at least they're trying to help, but they're not doing so in a way that doesn't make me feel humiliated. What would you call this middle ground?
Yeah, I think empathy is not accessible for everyone. To reach the point where people can empathize with you, yeah, they have to have some experience of disability, either of their own or people around them, or if they have not met disabled people, they will. I've recently wrote a poem about how a friend of mine used to say every time he saw a disabled person, and he would do it in front of me, like he did. Like, I'm sure he would do it for me also. So I'm not being, I think pity is fine. In day-to-day life, pity is, I will take pity. I will take the pity rather than indifference. But I can't take pity as a political position. I can't accept it as a disabled person. If I just say that pity is okay, pity is fine, then they will only give me us pity. That's what they will stop at. They will never try to be empathetic about it. Like airports. I just came from an airport, and I had to quarrel again because I was carrying some assistive device, and it was overweight. So then they made me took it out. And the entire exercise of just, I was trying to explain to them how disabled people and their assistive devices are very important to them. And I was using the word disabled, of course. And so this person came up to me, this manager, and they said to me, we don't call them disabled, we call them specially abled. And I was like, what, man, where did I land up? And because again, like, it's basic tokenism, but this is how the world works. But of course, we are at a point where we are expecting them to at least perform empathy, if not really empathize with us. And that's the expectation we go with. But we also take pity because we are in a situation where we are quite helpless at times. And that's the truth. No matter how brave of a face, no matter how many tweets we send, okay, we also know people, I will complain to this person. Because everyone is indifferent. The system, the government is indifferent to disabled people. And that's the truth. As an activist also, I realized that, one of the things is that it's completely useless, because people are not, they don't feel, they don't feel that way. They don't feel for disabled people beyond pity, like beyond, okay, you get something, I will give you something, you keep quiet. It's like a child, it's almost condescending. You keep quiet,
Yeah.
you are getting it. So that's because that's the condensation which comes with pity is the biggest problem. It's not only that they are not coming from a good place or a bad place, but how it makes you feel. It makes you feel small.
So you spoke for a bit about the different terms that are thrown at us, kind of. And so, what do you think is the source of these words? Is it just to soften the impact of the situation, or what do they signify?
I think it's a lot of things. Mostly, it's also the disability ecosystem, which has a system of funding, which has a system of where the money is coming from, who is setting the discourse. But it's also just, everyone's trying to set a discourse because there is no sense of history. There is no, so we are constantly borrowing. All the terms we use are borrowed from American lexicon. But our RPD law is nowhere, in anywhere comparable to, although it borrows heavily from ADA in, essence, but nowhere near in anything impactful. So yeah, no, the welfare system is nothing, but of course we have tokenism, and I think it helps to use the right terminology to get the right into, like, a lot of people throw around disability justice, and so I was seeing over the last few months, none of the disability organizations who talk about disability justice have even written one post about Palestine. And in America, where they borrow it from, where they have borrowed the disability justice from, disability justice, when it started off, they actually wrote a huge charter on Palestine. So, and so it is confusing, like how do you people use terms, throw terms, and talk about justice, and they are very, of course, they don't understand caste, like they're like indifferent to caste, indifferent to gender, also indifferent to everything. But yeah, disability justice, will say disability justice and social movements, or so it's, I think the vocabulary is not important, has never been important for me, and now I think it kind of backfires on this, because disabled people also now, that's the conversation starter and ender. Like someone comes and tells you something and you say, no, don't call us this, don't call this, and it ends there, because then they know that, okay, I will, if I just tell them this, and that's the end of my responsibility, because if you really tell them that, dude, I'm disabled because of you, you are ableist, then they will run away, so it's basically, we also tried, like a lot of disabled people also try to be nice to able-bodied people, and so that transition has to happen in India, that we have to stop being nice, and just I was at a Purple Fest, something called Purple Fest in Goa recently, and I realized most of the organizations hate me, not because I'm not useful to them, it's because I am very blunt. I just tell them that you are an able-bodied person, what are you doing here? Like, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be there, but it's a very honest question, how much space your organization is giving to disabled people. Meet a lot of disabled people who are unemployed, struggling for work, who can't get work. Like most of disabled people can't get work. And so, and they're smart enough, they are good enough to work in your organization, and yet you will borrow some policy person from some very fancy place who is interested in disability. It's fine, but also give space to disabled people. So yeah, it's all a lot of, there's so much tokenism that it's beyond, like, and all of these terminologies play to that tokenism, like I will call you which is what the government is doing, like we'll call you Divyang. So that's a classic case of tokenism. How does it matter, and there are many academics in India also, and many activists also have accepted Divyang, because apparently they think that projection helps in perception. Maybe they haven't seen what language people use behind our backs, or maybe they're like in regional languages and even in English. One of the most common terms which I come across is often kubda, langda, lula, in Hindi. And I'm sure it's same in the regional languages. So I think it's a lot of just, performance. Everything is performance these days anyways. So language becomes a performance also of empathy. And that's why we are also expecting them to just perform empathy. And that's why, your starting point, where we also expect them to just perform empathy, just perform it for us.
So I think there's a weird way in which disabled people are perceived, even compared to other marginalized groups. So, like, for example, queer people are told not to make their entire personalities about being queer.
Yeah.
And people of marginalized races are told not to do the same thing, essentially. But when it comes to disabled people, you are not really allowed to be anything more than disabled.
Yeah.
And why do you think there's that flip of the narrative there? Is that also because of performance or pity?
Because disability has never become part of social justice discourse. One of the main important factors, people have not put in effort to understand disability, and disabled people also have been very indifferent to every social movement, because see, disabled people's politics is very different from every other politics, because it's not, our politics starts from, as I have written in the book, it starts from our families. That's the biggest politics which happens, of caregiving and care receiving, and of ambition and independence and interdependence. And there's so much going on there. And just to get out, and I was telling people that, even ideology and bigger stages of, thinking and philosophy, if you an individual to go out there and think about these things, they have to have certain amount of independence. But if you know that tomorrow, if you have to sit in the toilet, you have to depend on your father or mother or brother who is a xenophobe, then you are dependent on them. You can't tell them every day that, dude, your politics is wrong. And that's where we are stuck, and that's what most people don't get, that is our politics. That's the core of our politics, and most of us can't get beyond that, and we can't even talk about that politics, because it's causes so much of social shame and stigma. We can't go around bitching about our parents and caregivers, and that they're bad people, or they treat us horribly, which they do sometimes. All of our caregiving, like, for me, caregiving is a very complex thing, because I have been ill in my 30s a lot, and my mother is my primary caregiver. And because I was in a small town, there is no caregiving. You can't hire caregiver in India. It's an imagined thing that you hire something. That doesn't happen. You have to, your mother will give you, or father, whoever. And it's a very complex thing, because a grown up 30-year-old, 32-year-old being cleaned every day by your mother is a very complicated relationship, because it also fills them with a lot of shame, sense of shame, guilt, and shame. And so it's never an easy relationship, all of these relationships. And it's also good to go beyond that. And capture a bigger stage is difficult for us, but also, like, all of the other movements, or like a lot of even simple, very aware people, they will put out statement that we encourage queer, Dalits, everyone to apply, but most of all, often they miss disabled people. So if it's not in their imagination, what will we do? What do you do? How do you approach that? Okay, at least you should think about, just put it out. Maybe you will never get a disabled person to work, apply for you, but at least put it out, so that there is one disabled person who thinks that they can work there. But it's also a lot of this is because disabled people are isolated. Yeah, it's a very alienating thing. I'm sure, like, for you also, just going to the college and be yourself. I know about queerness. Even queerness requires so much of performance these days. There's no performance in disability. Like, in fact, most of us are trying to hide our disability in some way, or trying to say that, okay, we have it together, we are not falling apart, but we are falling apart. And one of the reasons I started writing the book and writing poems about diapers and all, because I thought it's important to say that we are falling apart. You might not know this, but we are falling apart. Inside, we are falling apart. And for us, it is very important to acknowledge that, because otherwise people will think that, oh, but what is it? Everyone has problems, I'm sure someone has told you everyone has
Yeah,
problems.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I think all of us have those experiences, like everyone comes to you and say, oh, we also have problems, you also have problems. But we don't make it to the political idea of marginalization also, because we are very few in numbers. We are not in college. I'm sure in your college also there are very few disabled people. So we can't form collectives, we can't have a collective voice. It's very difficult. And also because all of our bodily experiences are different. And disabled people are very complicated people. We have very low self-esteem, many of us. And many of us are also have very like inferiority complex and all of these issues, because how we have grown up in our families and around people around us. So the moment we come in contact with other disabled people, we try to compete with them. We try to be a bigger victim than them. So it's a combination of I am better than you, but I am a bigger victim than you. And it completely makes no sense after a point of time. Why should I, there's both things. I'm better than you, but the reason I am not better than you is because I'm a bigger victim than you. And then you can't, like, everyone has their own bodily experiences and ways of marginalization, and so it's very difficult to have these conversations also because no one wants to talk about them. They don't want to talk about them. A lot of people will go out and get best Divyang award, and then they will do disability studies. This makes no sense. Yeah, matlab, what are you saying? You saying you are better than other disabled people, but then you will also, as soon as you find one person who you think is better than you will tell them ki it's because of my disability I'm not as good as you.
Yeah.
So, and so that's why we have inspiration porn, too much inspiration porn, and nothing else in terms of representation.
So talking about inspiration porn, I found that very interesting, and I do agree with it at times, because many times I've had people from my own family come up to me and say, you know what, I love to see you keep growing, and
Yeah.
you know what, I talk about you to my children and say, wow, look, if he could do it, you can do it, kind of. But I also feel that it's necessary to have these kind of stories publicized to some extent, because disabled people need role models to look up to, because they've been counted out to some extent by society, and so we need people like you to look up to and say, okay, I can achieve what I thought I could.
Definitely, we need examples. Problem is that it becomes a complete validation exercise. It doesn't become. It should turn into mentorship. It should turn into conversations. It should turn into, collaboration, and not merely just tokenism. What happens is generally, some person is high on the horse of, I've achieved, I have 500 awards or something like that. It's many disabled people, right? Like this award, that award, which is good. The point is, again, but also I want to point this out, that if you're telling, for example, if you're telling someone who is severely disabled, someone who has who is not even independent enough, or not independent, not you can't even, who needs a caregiver's help to go to the bathroom. Their setting of a role model is completely different from someone who can. It's a very simple thing. Yeah, it's a very simple everyday caregiving thing. Just going out to college, going out to school, going out to most deaf students have never been to college, because most colleges in India don't have interpreters, and we never talk about deaf students at all. And most deaf children go into vocational studies. Most children with neurological disorders and autism spectrum, they go into vocational studies, because there is no systematic study which will, the organized study which will support them in any way. So yeah, I think role models is fine, but role models also comes with a lot of privileges, yeah, which people don't acknowledge. That's a problem. That's the only problem I have. It's good to be role model, but You should acknowledge that you can do this because of some privileges which you have. I know I don't want to make it into a competition about ki, but I have less body privilege and more class or caste privilege. It becomes that competition is useless. But at least you should acknowledge that, yeah, I have this, because it makes sense. Because you don't want to demoralize young people, disabled people, by setting wrong examples and saying ki, oh, I have achieved this much, this much, this much. Because some of them can't because of their bodily abilities or their class caste positions. And it's a you can't it's also like like space. You have to, people who are inspirational models don't give space to other people, and that's the biggest problem. Like, I have found, when I started interacting with 50-year-old disabled people and 60-year-old who I thought were ideals, this one random article I publish, and they get jealous with me.
Oh, yeah.
Like a 50-year-old, they're so well established. It was so like, why? Then what's the point? You are so like well established, but then what should I do? What should I do? I should just say that you are a very good person. You are the only person. Like, it becomes like I am the only disabled person who exists, and I should only have the voice. And that's a very problematic thing, because a lot of people, and especially in the age of social media, a lot of their Instagram heroes and whatever. So, and a lot of blind people can't be on Instagram. So blind people will say it's just because I'm not on Instagram. They will say all these things, and then deaf people will say something. So then it becomes useless, the entire exercise. But yeah, I agree. I agree. But the whole parental thing also comes from, not from a good place. By the way, the relative thing comes from a space that I'm glad you are here. Your bare existence is being applauded, which is like so shitty. Why shouldn't I exist? This is my basic thing. I should exist. But people are like, oh, I'm glad you. When I first started performing spoken word poetry, people, there was a person who used to say, oh, you have come here, that's the reward for us. I said, why the fuck? What is the reward in here? I have come here because I paid money to the auto driver and came here, and your place is inaccessible, and yet I am here. Of course, that's my arc, but what is the arc that you have found out in this? Like, just I am here and you have. So yeah, but people, actually the biggest problem is you can't go around telling people that they are ableist. No one wants to hear that they are partaking in a thing called ableism. Like many people don't participate, like acknowledge that they are participating in homophobia or casteism, or like people are like very like, I am not, but I am different, and your disability is like huge. Like, I never behave badly to disabled people. Of course, I don't notice any place around me which is inaccessible. I haven't ever thought about disabled people even around me. But no, I am not ableist, because it also challenges the basic decency of human being. Human beings think that if they are bad to disabled, because all the religious training shows them that they have to be good to disabled people and all that. So yeah, it becomes all of that. Finally becomes inspiration also does some damage, I think, more than it, yeah.
So I know you've written about it in your book, but I'd like to hear a little more of your thoughts about the whole disability and queer intersection. Because I do this thing where I like to claim that I'm almost every minority possible, and then I rank them based on how marginalized I feel, based on which group I'm part of.
Yeah.
So where do you think that? How do you see that whole interplay playing out?
Yeah, I think queerness was very complicated for me, because personally, it came from a point of not fitting into the normative, because I thought myself as a straight person through my able-bodied years, and when disability started, I certainly stopped fitting into that culture. My imagination of attraction also changed. Now all of that happened, but I think it's too much. There's too much focus on, a lot of intersectionism is for tokenism. That's the truth, actually. If people were genuinely interested in intersectional things, then they would be actually, proactively. It's difficult also, I think, to expect people to get out of their comfort zone and think about everyone. But yeah, in terms of, this is just the marking of queer, disabled, for you, Muslim, all of that, and how that different categories of victimhood are shaped. I think all of those identities, for us to change any kind of world around us or for us, it has to be assertive. I often tell people, for you to be a queerness shouldn't be your I'm different, but queerness should be an assertion. Disability should be an assertion. That I am not normal, and I acknowledge that, and I am good with it. And that's the basic assertion. It's not that how uh, victimhood levels comes up because we live in an era where everyone is competing for space, and most of the people forget that we are not part of the room at all. We have been told to sit in some other room, and we are fighting amongst ourselves for space, but we think we are part of we are on the table, which is actually not true, because people are like very smart. Yeah, like people who have all kinds of privileges are like, we don't care. Matlab, why would they care? Why would they think about us? But yeah, I think the whole thing about queerness is also because I'm very afraid of performing my queerness, because basically it makes me, it is very, there's when I first entered queer spaces, there was too much gatekeeping, and any kind of gatekeeping makes me very scared, even in writing, even in if queerness, like it's I'm you have to perform a certain kind of masculinity or femininity, and I couldn't do that. I stuck with, there are things which I do out of practice, like I'm a man because out of practice, like I want to practice being a man. It's purely like, in terms of fitting as a, like being a man, I don't know if I'm a man, but I will practice being a man. And I do it because if I don't, I will be completely lost. I do it for my personal self-interest of being a man, performing a man. And it's very heartbreaking sometimes, because it's you're still not fitting in, no matter how much you try to perform that role. But it's fine. I think I practice hope in that sense also, because even if things go bad, I will practice hope. I will like, in many of the chapters in the book also, you will see I don't follow an arc, but I end with I'm hopeful. It's
Yeah.
also, yeah, it's a matter of practice for me, because I think if I'm not hopeful, then what can I be? That's the only way to be, to be hopeful. And I don't think hope is misplaced at all. I think hope is a very good thing, because it 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 leads you to beautiful things. It leads you to humor. It leads you to poetry. It leads you to the idea of romance, love, and of course, in the real world, all of these things feel meaningless at times. But then our lives also feel meaningless at times. So we have to create an alternative, image in our head of what we want the world to be. And I think all of that is important, because just to believe in love, the idea of love, the idea of poetry, that poetry can heal you, that you can write a beautiful poem, yet you can watch a flower in your balcony and heal, even if it sounds silly to many people. I think it, as a matter of practice, it is a beautiful thing. And because a lot of things are also because you have been told that what beauty is, what love is, what attraction is, what bodies are supposed to be, what a male is supposed to be, what a female is supposed to be, what a uh, so all of these categories uh, have to be contested in a, not in a way that victimhood. I think they have to be contested in a way that where you are at peace with yourself. So most of the things I do is just a process of trying to be at peace with myself. Otherwise, it doesn't make, like, what's the purpose, right? That's the main thing. which I do, which is and queerness is part of me. Queerness liberates me that way, because I think it says ki I don't need to fit in, you know, and it's a very good thing for me. I don't need to fit in. That said, queer spaces are also very able-bodied in many ways. Queer imaginations are very able-bodied. Queer ideas of sex are very able-bodied. And no matter how much symbolism, and I have now been with I've been around queer people only, mostly. Okay. So I've realized that no matter what they say, they are not into you. Because it's not a personal into you. It's generally because at some point in time you will find yourself not fitting in because of disability, because of body, despite all the rhetoric and conversation about that not being the base of queer, that is not a consideration of queerness. Actually, every queer person I have met has a typical imagination of attraction, that like they have a like straight people, queer people are also attracted to. There is a sample, the same kind of people they are attracted to. So I think that's fine, and then I think that's fine, maybe, but where do you fit yourself is becomes then a big question. So the idea is not fitting in even in queerness. Even in queerness, you remain in the outskirts somewhere, and you do your own thing. You find your own thing, and even if you can't find it, you try to make peace with it. That's often the case with me. Like I try to just think that at least I'm trying. I am trying to be hopeful, and it's better than having an imaginarium where some able-bodied person will a straight person will come and save me. Some woman will enter my life who will save me. But that's the imaginarium of most disabled people I know, and it's often heartbreaking. I have dated disabled people also, and I have realized that most of the people have this imaginarium that someday an able-bodied person will come and save them from this life, which is, I know, I understand where it comes from. Like there's lots of pressure to fit in, and there's a lot of honor in, I live in Patna, so there's a lot of honor in marriage, kids. Even if a person is a worst kind of person, if they get married and have children, they instantly get social respect. They instantly get invited to gatherings, families, etc., etc. And as a disabled person, you are completely, all my friends are married, have kids, school friends, and I don't fit in. I don't get called to all of these things, and I know I will never fit in, because yeah, that's that. But that's life. That's something you have to. But it's better to acknowledge that rather than just going around and thinking that okay, there's an alternative story in my head. Yeah, like there someday I will find प्यार कुछ कुछ होता है, तुम नहीं समझोगे वाला.
I think queerness kind of makes you, lose a little respect you had, in terms of, from even the disabled community in India or people in general.
Yeah.
When they see you're respected a little at least, and they can't tell I'm Muslim, so I get away with that. But then the moment you wear a nose ring and they completely view it differently.
Again, so
and it's quite sad.
Yeah, I've often thought about that, exactly what you said, because the nose ring becomes a performance of queerness. And for that queerness, they respect performance. They don't respect people, and that is the problem for me. Most people within queer communities also, or generally also where popular culture, they respect the performance of queerness. They don't respect queerness itself, because they don't understand the alienation which comes with being queer. It's not like we are being welcomed to a party through queerness. It's us acknowledging that we are living a very lonely life at times, because we can't fit into so many things. And they don't realize the alienation. One of the things which people who don't how alienating being disabled, how alienating being queer is actually. It is very alienating, and the more disabled queer or even queer people you meet, and older queer people, and you feel like a lot of them, of course, politics and all is fine, Politics is all sorted, but because that's also what most queer people have had to do for years, practice politics. But lives, I'm not sure that it is, maybe some people have found, but for me as a disabled person, when I think about queerness, is alienates me, who lives in a small not a very big town, who lives alone. I think if I was more assertive about queerness, I would be even more isolated and sad, because most of the people around me are homophobic anyways. So why would I go and rub, one of my school friends came this recently, met me and asked me, so are you also into boys now? That was the first conversation starter. And he's a psychiatrist. So I pity his clients. But that's that's what life is. Yeah, that's what and you realize that as soon as you open up about all these layers of your queerness and disability, it complicates the things further for you. It's not going to make it easier for you.
How do you practice assertion? You've spoken about how you're blunt and how it benefits you, but I try doing that and it doesn't work for me. So tips.
I think it doesn't work for any of us. Like I said, I went to that airport person and tried to assert my rights, and they said, we don't call them disabled, we call them specially abled. So it fails, and I can't do anything. And generally also in life also, I think mostly assertion fails. But I think assertion as a practice is very good. I think the way you assert, the basic things you do for assertion is you don't have to show it, but you are aware of your positionality in the world, in society, in terms of disability, caste, gender, everything. Self-awareness is one of the biggest assertion for you. I think self-assertion is always seen as an external thing. For me, assertion is always an internal thing. It's a thing which I assert my disability to make peace with my day-to-day life and with my present and with my future. I'm assertive, so I assert my disability so that I make sense of myself and not for others. So even when I'm doing lecturing someone on rights or disabled rights, I'm doing it to make sure that I explain to myself why I feel humiliated when I go to public places. I'm not given accessibility. I am explaining primarily it's for myself, and I will not ever say that I'm doing some kind of big collective action. It's primarily to tell myself that it's okay to get humiliated, because you are in this position and you will have to go through this, because people don't see you the way you see yourself. And that's where, yeah.
Sorry. Continue. I'll pitch
No,
in
no,
after you.
continue.
No. This has so I'm a trans person, a trans woman who doesn't always look trans, or woman, or I don't know what I am. So this idea of assertion is something that I've been thinking about as well, right? When you talked about gender and about queerness being a performing thing, right? I know exactly what you mean, because I've been around people, because I am somewhat in the queer spaces, and this is something that I've been I've been in public of a kind for a while now, and it's taken me only till 2022 to stop and correct people when they misgender. Right, it's taken me, and I started transitioning a little while ago. It's been about 12 years now, I think. It's taken me this long to say, okay, no, listen, you can't call me sir, you have to call me something else, right? And it's taken me that much long. And I like that idea that you said about assertion being something for yourself, to make sense of yourself. And I just wanted to pitch in and say, yes, that I feel that now, because it's taken me that long to understand. I do feel bad when somebody misgenders me. Earlier, I said I was okay with the whole thing. I'm non-binary or whatever, what is gender, all of those things, all the political statements people can make. But I was feeling bad when people did call me sir, and it's taken me this long to get to a point where say, no, I'm not a sir. Please do not call me a sir.
I think it takes time anyways. I think all of this takes a lot of time to understand ourselves. I started I was born with a rare disorder, and that started getting worse in my 20s, and I was struggling actually. But it was only 7-8 years later that I really said for the first time that I'm a person with disability, because it took me so long to just to tell myself that, and not for the world, to tell myself that I'm a person with like everyone's you. It's a very interesting question, because one of my friends was asking me, Abhishek, did you know that, like, did others see you as a disabled person when you thought you were able-bodied? And it's a very interesting question, because when I went for my master's, my TIS studies at TIS, during the interviews, one of the professors asked me, why haven't you applied under the PWD quota? Because she saw my limb, okay, but I couldn't see my limb as a disability at that point in time, despite being ill all the time. So because you are not able to make sense of the world and how people see, a lot of it, assertion also comes from how the world sees you. It's always a reaction kind of. It's a very good thing to react actually at some point of time, because otherwise they will continue to they will for them you are not important. Or they will either be indifferent, or they will actually harm you in whatever way possible. So assertion becomes important for us also, because to say, hey, stop, let me first define myself. Let me define myself for myself, so that you don't get to do that. So yeah, I think it's a very it's a very tough process. It's like the thing is, all of this makes sense as a meta narrative, but I think to live through that is very difficult, and to explain it to people is also very difficult.
So I have one final question. That's just what you're reading right now.
Yeah.
What are you reading right now?
What am I reading right now? I'm reading nothing, because I'm writing right now. I want to write fiction now, and so I'm writing something, a horror novel based in Bihar, but it might not work. But I want to read. I'm reading. I do read a lot of poetry generally, as every day, every other day I would read something. I also I've been meeting people, so I've been reading some new authors, but I have not read them yet, so I won't just say for and I've been I've not read for a long time. I've not read something which has completely changed me. I can tell you about the first thing which actually changed me in terms of personal writing, which was the bell jar. I was in college. And this was I was heteronormative, able-bodied person. I considered myself then. And I was reading the bell jar, and I started crying, and I couldn't stop. I'd cried so much. I've never cried that much reading a book, because no matter how much of a novel it's projected as, it's a personal story. I read it a personal essay, and it's somehow personal narrative which is very raw and truthful. I was asked, what is truth? You talked about truth telling, and because truth is subjective for us and all, but the most important truth is what you lived through. And what is my truth is definitely what I lived through, and I don't care what people think of it. But it is, if I tell it with all honesty, I think it talks to people. A lot of people who have read the book have actually written to me long essays about their own chronic conditions. And in a lot of ways, we forget that even though our bodily experiences are very different, we all have that alienation, even if it's very different bodily experience. That alienation is always there. The sense of doubt in your body is always there. So that's a beautiful thing about actually writing and reading.
I think one, you mentioned how you started reading Metamorphosis at the time when you started getting more and more ill, and it wasn't by choice. And I feel like that's very interesting because it's almost a parallel thing to what's happening in your situation where you feel like you're being viewed differently because of everything that's been happening around you.
Not
And in some,
not having cultural capital can be an advantage. So I read nothing till my graduation. In my masters, I started reading all this existent. I was reading Camus and Kafka and Murakami, and because Murakami was also very like popular back then. So yeah, and it still is. But so I was reading all of this stuff, and without realizing that, and then when I would write things, then I would just copy them because that's what you do as an author, or I mean, as someone who's trying to be a writer. But it also like, I think Kafka spoke to me. That story also is brilliant that way. It speaks to you at so many levels. But also but now I've grown out of it, in a sense, because I think now it's every broken-hearted person thinks they are, the person with, they are Kafkaesque. But like how they are, and everyone is trying to think of themselves as Guru Dutt in black and white frame standing at the altar of some hall and saying mita do jala do ye duniya. So but it's not happening, like it is not convincing for me, and I have met a lot of men who are like going through this existentialist crisis. So now I don't believe in existential crisis. Like I think also it's a phase. Maybe it's a lot of that is phase. But our experiences actually are, but I've crawled, and Kafka has only talked about it in a metaphorical sense. But I have literally crawled on stairs. I have crawled on the road, and it is. I can't compare it to any allegory, any metaphor, anything, because there's nothing like crawling on your all fours if you're a human being. Uh, and there is nothing. It is not even about being seen on anything, just about crawling and being helpless to that level. And even if it's not even about who, it's not even about. There's no being seen. It's just for yourself, uh, and that teaches you that, and then you have to understand that from the point again. The biggest difference from me for me in existentialist, the entire canon, and where I have reached is, I have, from saying that the society is making me alienated, or this existentialism because of societal, all of that is there. But how but it also empowers you if you completely embrace it. So I have reached a point where I completely embrace that crawling. I talk about crawling as a practice. I would really crawl if need be, and it's a big form of assertion for me, because I think there is no other way I would explain how the world is, how it is, without crawling on my fours and saying ki it's okay, I can do it. And that it's okay, it's very hard. You have to go through a lot of pain to get there, but it's rewarding, very rewarding.
Yeah, I think that's all I have. But we'd like you to read a chapter from your book.
Yeah, you want me to read something from Expectations?
Yeah, that's what hit home for me the most. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I will read that. I will read Expectations. When I was 5 or 6 years old, an astrologer told my mother that I would grow up to become a doctor. The astrologer was a relative of my mother, and his predictions were generally unsolicited. Most of his calculations saw people becoming doctors, professors, and lawyers, the popular professions of the day. As the years unfolded, it was clear that none of his predictions for anyone in our family were going to be true. In retrospect, his capabilities of charting planets were deemed suspicious, if not fraudulent. Although his failure to predict my future seemed stark, he was not the only one in the game of predictions. There were others silently predicting and guiding, even manipulating my life towards the future, albeit without any help of the planets or stars. When I was very young, people in my family wanted me to be an engineer. Most of the parents in my colony wanted their children to become engineers. At a time when government jobs were deemed financially unstable because of irregular payments, it seemed as if everyone in our small world had the same aspirations. They all wanted their children to become software engineers. Thankfully, as years passed by, it became clear that I didn't have the nerve to pursue anything related to mathematics. So they altered their expectation and chose the second best thing a boy of my age to grow up to be, a doctor, not the PhD kind, a medical kind. Others outside my family had different impressions about the professions I was suitable for. One of my school teachers thought I would make a good lawyer since I was good orator in school. A friend thought I would make a good politician because I was good with people. Others had similar plans for me at different stages of my student life. A civil servant, a manager in a multi-corporation bank, a probationary officer in a bank, someone who would just be like others, someone who would pass off as completely normal person. This chart of normality drew itself predictability till my early 20s despite failures or setbacks. Although people did alter their perceptions from time to time. Super successful, moderately successful, not successful, but still doing okay. It was an unspoken rating system that no one spoke about, but everyone understood. And then came disability and it changed everything. It was not that people didn't have a foresight into the adventures my body had planned for me. I was born with multiple impairments and was ill almost throughout my life. Yet somehow people expected me to come out of all that. All right. There were seldom any summer vacations where I was not ill for a week. Never a year when I had missed school due to prolonged illness. I have had multiple surgeries for different parts of my body, and new ailments kept cropping up. One year, it was rheumatic fever, which resulted in a preventive regimen of Panadol injections every month for the next 5 years. Another year, it was an appendix that might have been a kidney stone. My life was unmistakably eventful. Why was my disability a shock to them? Maybe because it was so visible in your face. They could see it in my walk, in my fall, in everything I did. In the family and society I grew up in, disability was for a far-fetched idea. No one ever talked about what it was. It was something far away, something that others suffered from. So they never expected one of their own to be disabled. Medical science was making progress. It seemed that everything could be corrected in due time. Correction was always the first rule. Ever since I was a kid, my grandfather who was a doctor, kept trying to correct things. I once went to Kolkata to get a custom jacket made for my spinal cord, something that could correct my curved back. It didn't work out because I was a child not ready to be caged by a jacket which was constantly crushing my chest. Then it was the surgery for my fistula, the root of my UTI, which took months to heal. Months of sitting on a pot of warm water, months of unrelenting pain. A year later, I was back to having frequent UTIs. They said there might be more undetectable fistulas, whatever. I had stopped listening. For years, I had carried the weight of expectations on my back, and they were always heavier than any other part of my body. These expectations had turned me into an emotionally fragile person. I was always having a nervous breakdown on the results day. School results, college results, or some competitive exam where I definitely knew I would fail. I was terrified of consequences of my math score. I was terrified not of failing, but of things I would not be told after my failure, or things I would be told after my failure. Whatever was going inside me soon turned out worse. I was jealous of everyone around me. I developed an inferiority complex. I was petty at times. All of these made me very ill tempered, and I was often described as an angry child despite my potential. People told me I would do better if I could just get rid of my temper. I was always caught in this turbulent mixture of expectations and disappointment, which took a toll on me. And it took years for me to recover from that. The emotional and psychological scars that I bore during those days were often hidden from the world. Or maybe no one really cared about it. They didn't see any physical manifestations of it. Or did they? I don't know. I know now that I was often depressed. Even small failure crushed me completely. Every defeat made me sour. Every bout of illness made me bitter. The only way I coped with these events was to eat my way through them, emotional eating as they call it. But people never thought it was a problem. My anger was. No one made that connection. This continued for 20 odd years before things changed. My body started changing. The process was slow and painful. First, they thought I was making excuses or that I was just lazy. You must try harder. Everyone has problems. You should learn how to manage your body. Oh, if only they knew what I was going through. It was only when my body started to leak that perception started to change. I would see it on their faces. My impairments were visible and my limp was always getting worse. This visible vulnerability changed everything. It changed the expectations that people had of me. The gaze of pity and hopelessness arrived at my doorstep. I was no longer expected to become successful or even moderately successful. I was no longer expected to keep a job. I wasn't special. I wasn't different. I was just disabled. The disgust towards a disabled body is so strong that no language can convolute it. My disability started defining my future, started defining who I was, at least for them. In the able bodied imaginarium of things, you are expected to do certain things. You are expected to get married or at least find a partner, propagate the species by any means possible, be part of institutions such as a family and a society. When you become disabled, you can still do those things, and yet no one expects you to do any of these things. No one expects you to find a partner. They wish you could have someone who can be a caretaker, someone who could submit under the pressure of class and gender, or they want someone who could carry the financial burden of your survival. But even if nothing works out, it won't matter. Disabled lives are seen as a tragedy, and anything else only adds to it. When we go to weddings, while the world is gushing about prospective matches of every other able bodied person of our age, our prospects are marked by silence. To be truthful, for me, this was a relief. It was one of the gifts of disability, even with all the alienation that it came with. For my entire life, I'd been trying hard to fulfill the expectations of people around me, doing everything to gain the respect of society, even though none of it seemed fulfilling. The idea of productivity, the sense of meritocracy fueled by class and caste positions never made sense to me. With disability, I could see all of it from a distance and make sense of the societal structures that dictated our idea of success or failure. That's it. It is very tiresome when people expect from you is to all people expect from you is to be alive and somehow sustain. They tell you that you should be thankful for that you are alive and can do things that engage you. You become object of unasked for charity. You become the receiver of pompous kindness. Your individuality seems to disappear in the eyes of others. Do your parents take care of you? How do you manage food? How do you live alone? Have you consulted this doctor? Have you considered asking for help? It's not ego or even dignity which reacts to these questions. It is the irritability at the ignorance of people, the misunderstanding that they are doing this out of kindness of their hearts. Every conversation can't become an explainer of disabled lives, not when the able bodied world makes no effort to really understand us. However, I understand that they have no interest in our lives. Why would they? The expectations I had from myself changed when I became disabled. They changed for the better. I wanted to be more kind, less angry. I wanted to forgive and even forget. I wanted to become a better person. I'm trying to let go of the idea that I have to be independent all the time. I'm learning to ask for help. I'm learning to fall apart without worrying about how it will look. All of these has made me a different person for better or worse. Why do stars or planets never predict what kind of person I am to become? If I was told I would be a better person, even with a disability, it would probably have been easier for me to embrace my disability. As for the person who predicted my future, his predicament is a story worth telling. Later in life, he became completely blind, losing his sight over the years. People often said nasty things behind his back. Some said this was the result of all the scams he ran in the name of predicting people's future. It was karma, they said. And in that karmic stigma, both our lives collided in what could have been a celestial event. His disabled future and my disabled future. His able-bodied present with my able-bodied past. For all the charting of the future, none of us thought we would grow old to be what we always were. Not only us, but everyone around us. We always were and still are imperfect. Imperfect. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Ma'am? What do you think will be your favorite chapter in the book?
My favorite chapter in the book is actually something not about this, like disability. It's called The Invisible Act of Being, is my favorite chapter actually. I love it because I think it speaks for a lot of us who just like feel like being invisible with all the pressures of doing all kinds of things and trying to prove that you are human, you are part of something, to respect and all of that. So yeah, that's my favorite chapter. If you have time, I can read it, but we can also finish because I think we are already what? It's already 1 hour. Yeah. Tell me whatever you want, Mohammed. You are the main guy.
I'm not, really not. I'm just a vessel for the department.
You're just a vessel for the department. Yeah.
We can read a little bit of that chapter and then we can maybe on the
Yeah.
5-10 minutes and then it close.
Yeah, small chapter. It takes 2 minutes or 3 minutes. The Invisible Act of Being. There is a song, always a song playing in my head. Then my head starts playing with this idea of rain. The rain is heavy. Heaviness seeps in. There is seepage on the walls. Do not build walls around you. You are broken but beautiful. How beautiful are the withered petals of jasmine, withering in a book, shrinking with the passage of time. Time makes no sense when you shrink from within. I went and did theatre to hide from the world. Backstage. In the darkness, no one would see me. I wouldn't see myself. I wouldn't see my flaws. What a beautiful thing that would be. Never center stage, always in the wings, never an actor, all away from praise. Is there something wrong with him? No, he's practicing to be invisible. He's on the method number 8, hide behind failure. Living in dark rooms doesn't rob you of foresight. You switch on the lights when you realize that. My legs have shrunk over the years. Muscle shapes itself from the lower legs. I don't want them to become invisible. That would be awkward. Only 2/3 of my body would be visible. Freak, I would have joined the circus. I was once Santa Claus in school. Can I be the Joker? Not the sad film one or the angry TikTok one, but the Joker of the circus, hiding behind paint, invisible. The circuses have all closed down. Every day I think about becoming a troll. It's a popular option with unemployed people. You get to have the face of an egg. You get to use all the angst, all your failures account for something when the world doesn't know who you are. You can hide behind anonymity, except for the government and those who pay you. No one will know anything about you, and you will still get to have opinions, vile opinions, or casual ones, or abusive ones. Your work profile can be diverse, but the pay is minimal for all the poison. There are only so many snakes that I can hide inside me. I shy away from protest groups, although I am always part of protests. I raise my voice whenever my conscience pricks me. I can always delete that voice later. It's not as if I'm considered an authority on voices. My skills as an actor are still weak. The world has upgraded to projectors while I'm still stuck with a small magic lantern. Someone please tell Proust he can revisit his childhood in my heart. It's full of forlorn and abandonment and longing. But there is a magic lantern that tells fascinating stories at night. You can hide behind the idea of work, but nothing I do is considered to be work by society. Everyone will see through it. Also, I want to be invisible, not alienated. Offices don't make you invisible. You are still expected to meet your deadlines, put in the hours, suck up to people, network. It might end up alienating you as a person. I heard this on some random YouTube video, But if someone asks you, tell them the writer is an authority on marks. One can always hide behind daily routine. There's a lot of work to be done: cleaning, washing, cooking, procrastination, fantasizing. Lock yourself in a house and the world will forget that you exist sooner or later. Out of mind, out of sight. Or the other way around. Whichever suits you. There's always an inner monologue running in your head, though, which glorifies solitude, which praises your restraint. When you start believing that you have become great by becoming invisible, you no longer remain invisible. A mirror is always staring back at you. Being invisible should be a state of being, peaceful. It should come with no reputation. Maybe it's a spiritual state. Maybe I don't understand spirits anymore. I quit drinking a year ago. What do you think of this joke? Did I make you feel as if your intelligence doesn't matter? Good. Then you are on your way to wisdom. When you get there, please write to me. Send it anywhere. It will be invisible by then. Every day I do yoga to become invisible. But whenever I culminate the act, I wonder when I will reach the stage when I can do a headstand and put it up as an Instagram story. Just 120 people that I want to impress. Often I delete social media. I delete myself. But I have no intention of being anonymous. I just want to be invisible. I'm still learning how that is possible. Please write to me if you have found out. Just send a blank postcard. I will know it is from a person who has learned to attain invisibility.
Thank you for that. That was great. Thank you. That was also one of the shortest chapters in the book.
Yeah, I think I'm very, I can't be verbose. I think which is a good thing also. I think my editor said it's a good thing, so I said good. I will take it as a compliment.
I
But yeah,
struggled to write without it.
yeah, I think writing is a very organic thing for me. But I want to be more disciplined. But that's with every writer. Yeah, ask VJ. We are all struggling that ways.
How is it me under the bus?
Okay, should we end?
Yeah, I've said everything I wanted to say.
Okay, good. Nadika, something that you want to add?
No, I mean, every time you were saying whatever you're saying, I wanted to, like, I was nodding my head very sagely because I felt many of this in many places. I've seen, I knew I was trans very early in life, but I didn't begin transitioning till I was about 32 years old because, whatever, you try to fit in, you try to be, your parents' son as they imagined, or parents' daughter as they imagined, or whatever it is that they imagine of you. And then at various points in time, I've thought about all of these things, and that's also the reason behind my name. It's a Tamil word that means actress, right? And so at various points of time, I thought I was putting on a show of being one thing or the other for everybody. So yeah, every point you said, I was sort of, I was going to pitch in and say, oh yeah, that's me too. But then obviously we can keep doing that for the rest of our lives. And
But
so I
that's
just want to
true.
say,
I think we have lots of like, that's what I said, the whole thing about intersectionalities and queerness and disability. It's also like, I think we have so much, and it's not even, about intersectionalities or anything. It's just, it's alienating. Everything is alienating. And
yeah.
there's a common theme of alienation which follows our lives.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you very, very much for this, Abhishek. Thank you, Mohammed. This was fantastic, and I stayed quiet because I just wanted to, just nod my head and agree, and then reflect on it for myself. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Thank you, VJ. Thank you, those who've been watching and listening, and also nodding their heads. Thank you all. We'll catch up again very soon. Meta will continue for the next few days. There's lots of things happening tomorrow. We have writers Jayant Kaikini and Tejaswini Niranjana coming to our campus to discuss things. So yeah, very, very glad that this was possible. Over to you, Vijay.
Also, this quiz is on Saturday. Please come.
Sorry, Mohammed, I didn't catch that. Oh, quizzes on
I
Saturday.
just said
Okay,
no
fine.
quiz is on Saturday.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you so much for this. I'd like to have you on campus as well sometime soon in the future. Hopefully, in the coming semester, we can organize.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you, Mohammed. That was very nice conversation. It's very nice to.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have so much. Yeah, that's what, like despite this, we talk about personal narrative and all, but it's just, there's so much to tell, which is so common, so shared experiences. But yeah, we just have to be more, just underline the word shared. Chalo, ठीक है. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, Abhishek.